I read my mother's message twice, although the words are plain enough the first time. This year we're doing something a little different. Fallon and Dalton were invited to a lake house in Vermont, and your father and I have decided to join them. With everyone's schedules, it may be easier if people make their own plans. Hope you understand. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, 18 of my relatives and I have just been told to make other plans. I stand at the marble counter in my Boston condo with a wooden spoon in one hand and my phone in the other. A test batch of Grandma Mavis's cranberry chutney cools on the stove. The first 2 were too sweet. This one is close. Last Sunday, Mom asked me to bring enough for the whole table. I typed 3 different replies and erased them all. What remains is one word. Enjoy. The message shows as delivered. I put the phone face down and finished stirring, because finishing things is what I do when I don't know where else to put the feeling. I had known about the Vermont invitation. Fallon mentioned it at her birthday dinner 2 months ago, just before I told my family that Cybercore had been acquired. She said Dalton's parents had rented a lake house and wanted all 5 of them there. Mom had immediately begun discussing whether the twins needed new snow boots. When my turn came, I told them the transaction had closed that morning. Dad asked whether I would be staying on through the transition. Mom asked whether the buyer could still back out. Before I could answer either question, Fallon brought out photographs of her remodeled kitchen. I never told them the transaction value. No one asked. My phone rings. My cousin Judd's name appears on the screen. Tell me I misunderstood that text, he says. You didn't. Grandma thought dinner was still at your parents' house, so did Walden and Illa. Tierney already changed her nursing shift because your mother said 4 o'clock sharp. I look at the chutney cooling beside me. They gave us 3 weeks. No one is going to arrive at an empty house. That's not the point, Greer. 18 people arranged the weekend around them. Grandma can't fit everybody in her apartment, and half the family has already turned down other invitations. He is right. 3 weeks is enough time to avoid catastrophe. It is not enough to make the cancellation decent. For as long as I can remember, my parents have treated plans involving Fallon as fixed, and plans involving everyone else as movable. This is simply the largest version of it. What if I host? I ask. Judd goes quiet. 6 weeks ago, after the acquisition closed, I bought a furnished 9-bedroom house outside Peterborough, New Hampshire. The previous owners had called it an estate. I had called it space. 40 acres, a pond, a long drive, and enough distance from Boston to sleep without hearing traffic. I had spent 4 nights there. At the new place? Judd asks. There is room. Not enough beds for everyone, but there is an inn 10 minutes away. Do you actually want to host Thanksgiving? It is an irritatingly good question. I want my relatives to have somewhere to go. I also want my parents to hear that the dinner they discarded continued without them. Both things are true. I want Grandma to have Thanksgiving, I say. That wasn't quite what I asked. It's the answer I have. He lets me get away with it. By the time we hang up, he has agreed to contact the people from Mom's group text while I deal with food and beds. The first person I call is Chef Bramley, who catered the closing dinner for Cybercore. He listens while I describe the house, the number of guests, and the date. I committed to a family in the Hamptons in June, he says. I can't leave them 3 weeks out. I can triple your rate. There is a short pause, long enough for me to hear what I have just offered him. More money to break his word to somebody else, because my parents broke theirs to us. My answer would still be no, he says, not unkindly. But I know a catering team in Keene. They can handle the turkeys and kitchen service. Let your family bring the food that makes the day theirs. My first instinct is to tell him that I am not organizing a potluck. I picture mismatched serving dishes on the long walnut table and foil pans beside the china that came with the house. Then I picture Grandma alone in her apartment, because I was more interested in producing a perfect dinner than giving her one. Send me their number, I say. Judd calls again that evening. All 18 of the other people from the canceled dinner have responded. 16 accept. My Aunt Illa and Uncle Walden do not want to be caught between Mom and me, so they have decided to spend Thanksgiving with Illa's brother. I tell myself this is reasonable. It still feels like the first bill arriving. 4 college friends who have no local plans except when I invite them. With Orson, the caretaker who stayed on after I bought the property, and me, the final dinner count is 22. I write every name on a legal pad. For years I have made lists because lists do not change their minds without warning. This one does not make me feel as safe as it should. That night, I open the closet in my spare bedroom and pull down the box marked family. I tell myself I am looking for Grandma's chutney recipe, although the recipe is already propped beside my stove. The first album opens to Christmas morning in 1995. Fallon is centered in 3 consecutive photographs, holding the art set she had requested. I appear at the edge of one frame with my new winter coat zipped to my throat. I had wanted a telescope. The coat was a good coat, warm enough for 6 New England winters, and I hated myself for being disappointed by it. The next object in the box is my MIT acceptance letter. The envelope has a permanent crease through the seal. MIT's aid package covered most of the cost, but it included a family contribution my parents said they could not make. Dad also refused to co-sign a private loan for the remaining gap. "We can't reorganize our lives every time one of you wants something expensive," he told me. Fallon was finishing a teaching degree at State, and he used her as the sensible comparison. She chose a path she can afford. I appealed the aid calculation, took the federal loans available in my own name, and worked campus jobs until freelance programming began paying better. 6 months after telling me they could not take on more debt, my parents refinanced their house to pay for Fallon's wedding. 4 years later, they scheduled Fallon's baby shower on my commencement weekend because the country club had an opening. Grandma came to Cambridge. My parents sent flowers. I put the acceptance letter back in its envelope. These memories are true. But lately I have begun to notice the way I arrange them, evidence in a case that never reaches a verdict. If I can prove the pattern precisely enough, perhaps my parents will finally admit it. Perhaps Fallon will. Perhaps I will stop needing them to. My phone lights up with Grandma Mavis's name. "Judd says you're rescuing Thanksgiving," she says. "I'm giving it a location. That's less heroic. Your mother told me the Vermont trip wouldn't affect anybody. I let her say it." I sit on the edge of the bed. Grandma has defended me in small ways for most of my life and remains silent in all the large ones. Why? I ask. She does not pretend not to understand. Because Rowena is my daughter. Because I was afraid that if I pushed too hard, she would decide I was interfering and I would see less of both of you. Then the years went by, and silence became easier to explain than to stop. It is not the answer I wanted. It sounds honest enough to hurt. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," she says. I should have risked the argument. I pressed my thumb against the crease in the MIT envelope. "Come Wednesday. Before dark, you can have the room facing the pond. I'll be there, and I'm bringing the stuffing. Your caterer can survive the insult." Over the next 2 weeks, the house changes by degrees. The Keen catering team inspects the kitchen and agrees to roast 2 turkeys, handle timing, and provide 3 servers. Judd reserves 6 rooms at the nearby inn for the overflow and organizes rides without turning the process into a motorcade. I ordered 2 folding tables that can join the walnut one, along with simple white place cards. I also spend too much money on linens, flowers, and guest room baskets. "No one needs monogrammed robes for one night," Judd says when he finds me comparing them online. "They're not monogrammed." The speed of that answer concerns me. I close the browser. Mom learns about the dinner before the first week is over. Her message arrives while I am choosing which family photographs, if any, to display at the house. "I hear you're turning Thanksgiving into an event at the new property. I hope this isn't intended to make a point." I type, "You canceled dinner for 19 people. The point made itself." I delete it. Instead I write, "Everyone needed a plan. Now they have one." She does not answer me, but she calls Grandma, then Judd, then Tierney. According to Judd, she never directly tells anyone not to come. She merely wonders aloud whether accepting my invitation will reward me for being dramatic. No one else cancels. That should feel like victory. It does not. It feels like the family is being asked to vote, and I know too well what it is like to wait for the count. 5 days before Thanksgiving, Orson meets me in the mudroom with a printed weather bulletin. A nor'easter may move through southern New Hampshire late Wednesday into Thursday. The forecast is still uncertain, but he has serviced the generator and cleared the required space around its intake and exhaust. The house has fuel, flashlights, blankets, and more firewood than we are likely to use. We move the Boston departures to Wednesday morning. By mid-afternoon, Grandma is settled in the room facing the pond. The guests staying at the inn check-in before dusk join us for an early dinner and return to their rooms before the first snow. A shuttle brings them back Thursday morning, well before the wind strengthens. No one is asked to travel once the storm begins in earnest. The house is loud by Wednesday night. Children discover that the upstairs corridor allows them to run in a complete circle. Cousins open wine in the kitchen. Grandma and the caterer's lead cook negotiate how much sage belongs in stuffing with the gravity of diplomats discussing a border. I move to it all, checking towels, thermostats, dietary restrictions, and arrival times. Whenever I sit, I remember something else that could go wrong. Judd finds me aligning place cards after midnight. Greer. The names will still be legible if the cards aren't perfectly parallel. I know. Do you? I set down the card in my hand. It is mine. Without deciding to, I have placed it at the head of the original table. I don't want anyone to feel like an afterthought, I say. Then talk to them tomorrow. They didn't come for your table settings. He goes upstairs. I remain in the dining room and look at the 22 names. After a minute, I move my own card halfway down one side between Grandma and one of my college friends. Thanksgiving morning begins with coffee, wet mittens, and 3 children asking how soon pie can reasonably be considered breakfast. Snow has covered the drive, but not yet made it dangerous. The caterers arrive from Keene before the roads worsen, put their overnight bags in the former staff wing, and take over the kitchen with reassuring efficiency. At noon, Fallon posts a photograph from Vermont. She and Dalton stand with their 3 children in front of a stone fireplace. My parents flank them, keeping it small this year. Family first. I read the caption once and put my phone in a drawer. For the next several hours, there is too much actual family around me to study a photograph of 7 people. I help Grandma loosen her stuffing with stock. I listen to Tierney describe the hospital unit she wants to transfer into. One of my college friends teaches the children a card game at the coffee table. Orson comes inside with snow in his eyebrows and accepts a mug of cider. The dining table is not elegant in the way I first imagined. Grandma's blue casserole dish clashes with the china. Tierney's sweet potatoes arrive in a foil pan because she came directly from a shift the day before. Someone puts a bowl of dinner rolls where I intended the flowers to go, so the flowers move to the sideboard. It is better this way, although it takes me most of the afternoon to admit it. Just after 4, we sit down. Every place card has a person behind it. Uncle Walden is absent. So is Aunt Sila. My parents, Fallon, Dalton, and the children are in Vermont. The empty spaces exist even without empty chairs. I do not pretend otherwise. Grandma reaches for my hand before Judd gives the blessing. On my other side, my friend Nola slips her fingers around mine. For one moment, I am connected to both the family I was born into and the people I found elsewhere, with no need to rank them. The power fails during the main course. The dining room chandelier goes dark. Wind presses snow against the windows, and the children stop talking. A few seconds later, the generator tries to start, catches, then shuts down. Orson checks the panel in the hall. Wind packed the intake faster than I expected. The house will hold heat. Nobody goes outside except Judd and me. They pull on coats and head through the mudroom with flashlights. The caterers shut the kitchen doors to preserve warmth around the ovens. I find the emergency candles but discover that half the holders are still packed in a box somewhere. This is the kind of failure I have spent my adult life trying to prevent. Visible, inconvenient, beyond the reach of a credit card. We have enough phone flashlights to land a plane, Tierney says. We'll survive. Flashlights appear along the table. Grandma asks the children whether they know why their great-grandfather was once banned from carving the turkey. They do not. Neither do I. The story involves a new electric knife, a severed extension cord, and gravy on a ceiling. By the time Grandma finishes, the children are shouting questions and 2 of my cousins are disputing her version. Other stories follow, not the polished ones my parents repeat every Christmas, but the incidents people remember differently. A canoe that sank in 3 feet of water. An uncle who wore 2 different shoes to a wedding. The summer Fallon and I tried to hatch a supermarket egg under a desk lamp. I had forgotten that last one. She made you take the blame when it broke. Grandma says. She was 6. She was strategic. I laugh before I can decide whether the memory should hurt. The generator comes on 13 minutes later. The chandelier brightens, revealing gravy cooling in boats, wax on 2 saucers, and everybody still in their seats. Applause greets Orson and Judd when they return. Orson accepts a plate and sits at the open place we kept for him. Conversation continues without waiting for me to direct it. I had believed the evening depended on my ability to anticipate every need. For 13 dark minutes, the gathering took care of itself. After dessert, my nephew Vaughn posts several photographs to the family group online. One shows the long table under candlelight, another catches Grandma laughing so hard that she has closed her eyes. I am in the corner of that photograph, carrying a stack of plates. For once, I do not mind being at the edge of the frame. The storm passes overnight. Friday morning is bright, and the pond beyond the eastern windows looks like a sheet of white paper. The guests who had rooms at the inn emerge from improvised beds in the library and upstairs sitting room. No one was willing to send them back out in the storm after dinner. The catering team packs its equipment after breakfast and leaves us with labeled trays. Cousins, who have never volunteered in my mother's kitchen, begin loading my dishwasher without being asked. My phone remains in the drawer until after 10. When I retrieve it, I find messages from relatives, photographs from the previous night, and one missed call from Mom. There is no viral post, no crowd of strangers taking sides. But within our family, everyone can see both Thanksgiving gatherings. Dalton has commented beneath Fawn's candlelit photograph, "Wish we'd known." "This looks wonderful." Mom calls again while I am refilling Grandma's coffee. I take the call in the library, where the windows overlook the frozen pond. "I hope you're pleased," she says. "Dinner went well." "That's not what I mean. Everyone is comparing photographs now." "I didn't post them. You knew people would." And apparently Dalton looked up the acquisition. He told Fallon the company sold for $420 million. "You never told us that." The old assumption returns. Information no one requested is information I must have withheld. "I told you the company had been acquired. You made it sound like an ordinary business deal." It was a business deal. $420 million was the transaction value, not a check written to me. Investors and employees own shares. Taxes exist. Even after all of that, my portion changed my life. I do not owe her the number. Dad joins the call. "The point is, we didn't understand the scale." "You didn't try to understand anything about it. 2 months ago, I told you the work that consumed 7 years of my life had reached its biggest day." Mom asked about Fallon's kitchen before I finished explaining. Neither of them answers. In the past, I would have filled the silence with qualifications. I would have said I knew they did not mean it. I would have made my own hurt small enough for them to step over. "And now you've turned Thanksgiving into a referendum on our parenting," Dad says. "No. You canceled dinner. I served it somewhere else." I end the call before the conversation can circle back to my tone. For the rest of Friday, I stay with the people in the house. I help strip beds. I send guests home with leftovers. Grandma kisses me at the door and says nothing about saving Thanksgiving. She only asks me to call when I reach Boston. By Saturday evening, the estate is quiet again. I wash the last serving spoon by hand and notice a faint cranberry stain on one of the white napkins. I leave it for the laundry service instead of treating it at once. I drive back to Boston before dark. The concierge calls my condo shortly after 10 on Sunday morning. "Miss Ashcroft, your parents are in the lobby. Shall I send them up?" I could say no. I nearly do. "Give me 5 minutes," I say. I move 2 coffee cups from the living room table, then stop myself from straightening anything else. When the doorbell rings, Mom and Dad are waiting in the hall in the clothes they wear to church. Mom holds her gloves in both hands. Dad carries nothing. "We thought face-to-face would be better," he says. I let them in because I want to know whether they have come to talk about what happened or about what I own. They sit on the white sofa. Dad looks toward the harbor windows. Mom studies the framed photograph on the bookshelf. It is from my MIT graduation. Grandma and I stand beneath a tree, squinting into the sun. "We didn't realize you still felt so strongly about all that," Mom says. "What did you think I felt?" "You always managed. You were independent." Fallon needed more reassurance. It is the oldest explanation in our family, because I survived neglect competently. The neglect became evidence that I did not need anything. "I was independent because I learned not to ask you twice," I say. Dad leans forward. "We made the best decisions we could with the information we had. You had my MIT aid letter. You knew the amount the school expected from you. 6 months later, you borrowed against the house for Fallon's wedding. You knew my commencement date before you booked her baby shower. You knew Thanksgiving dinner involved 18 other people before you accepted Vermont." Mom's mouth tightens. "Are you keeping a ledger?" "I did for a long time. I kept thinking that if I brought you enough evidence, you would tell me I was right to be hurt." I look at the photograph of Grandma and me. The girl in the cap and gown had spent the ceremony scanning the crowd. even though she knew which two people were not coming. I don't need a verdict anymore, I say. But I won't agree that these were accidents. You made choices. Usually, you chose what kept Fallon happy or made the family look easiest from the outside. Then you asked me to call it practicality. Dad sits back. This is exactly what we were afraid of. Success has made you self-righteous. The words land in the place he expects. For a second, I am 22 again, holding a diploma that suddenly feels like evidence against me. Then the feeling passes through instead of taking up residence. Cybercore has nothing to do with whether you attended my graduation. The estate has nothing to do with whether you canceled on Grandma. Money only made it possible for me to set another table. It didn't create the reason I had to. Mom looks down at her gloves. We should start fresh, she says. The past is the past. Christmas is coming. We could all be together at the new house and put this behind us. It is the offer I have wanted in one form or another since I was a child, a holiday at which my parents choose to come to me. I can see it with humiliating clarity. Mom carrying a casserole into my kitchen, Dad standing by the fire, Fallon's children running through the halls. A complete photograph at last. I also see what accepting now would require. No apology. No naming of what happened. I would provide the house, the meal, and the evidence of reconciliation. They would provide their presence and call it equal. No, I say. Mom lifts her head. No. You aren't coming to the estate for Christmas. Dad stares at me. You're excluding us to punish us. I'm refusing to use Christmas to pretend this conversation went better than it did. My voice is steady, but grief moves beneath it. Refusing them does not feel like winning. It feels like closing a door on the version of the holiday I still want. If you want a relationship with me, start by writing down what you believe you did. Not what I misunderstood. Not what success supposedly did to me. What you chose. Send it when you can do that honestly. I will decide when I am ready to answer. Mom's eyes fill, but she does not cry. You're giving us an assignment? I'm giving you the first step. You don't have to take it. Dad stands. I don't think you understand how families work. I understand how ours has worked. That's what is changing. He walks toward the door. Mom remains seated for several seconds, turning her gloves over in her lap. I didn't think of it as choosing, she says at last. I know. I thought Fallon needed us more. And I needed you differently. That did not mean less. She nods once, but I cannot tell whether she agrees or only hears me. When she follows Dad into the hall, I do not ask her to stay. After the elevator doors close, I return to the living room and sit on the sofa they have left warm. The condo is silent. There is no rush of liberation, only the knowledge that I did the thing I said I would do. I had the chance to be chosen, conditionally and too late, and I refused the conditions. Fallon calls that evening. I let it ring, then listen to her voicemail alone. Mom told me you won't invite them for Christmas, she says. She also told me you blame me for everything, which I don't believe is what you said. I looked at my Thanksgiving post again. Family first. I knew how it would sound to you when I wrote it. I posted it anyway, I'm sorry. She pauses long enough that I hear one of her children in the background. They told me everybody else was making separate plans and that you wanted an excuse to show off the house. I chose to believe that because it made the trip easier. That's mine, not theirs. If you ever want to talk, I'll come to you. No audience. I save the voicemail without answering. 2 days later, I send her a message proposing coffee the following week. We meet halfway between our homes at a bakery where neither of us knows anyone. Fallon arrives before me and has already bought my coffee. She has added milk but no sugar, which surprises me. Somewhere in the years when I was convinced she knew nothing about me, she learned at least that. The conversation is not tearful or complete. She tells me Mom had compared us in both directions. To me, Fallon was sensible, loved, effortless. To Fallon, I was brilliant, difficult, destined to leave them behind. Every time you did something big, Mom told me it didn't matter, she says. Then she would call me 5 minutes later and ask whether I thought you looked down on us. I started needing your success to be fake. Otherwise, I didn't know what my place was. You still made choices. I know. She does not ask me to absolve her. That is the reason I agree to meet again. During the weeks before Christmas, my parents respect the boundary in the narrowest possible sense. They do not arrive at the estate. Dad sends a 2-page letter that begins with explanations, crosses out several of them, and eventually names the wedding loan, the commencement weekend, and Thanksgiving. Mom sends her own letter 4 days later. Hers is shorter and harder to read. Neither letter repairs anything. Both are more than they have offered before. I put them in a drawer until I have the space to decide what comes next. Christmas at the estate is smaller than Thanksgiving. Grandma comes. Judd brings his family. 2 of my college friends return, and Fallon, Dalton, and the children arrive in the afternoon with a honey-baked ham and no social media caption prepared. There is no private chef. The turkey finishes early, the potatoes finish late, and 1 string of lights on the tree goes dark before dinner. No one treats any of it as an emergency. Fallon asks before taking photographs. I say yes to one by the fireplace and no to posting it. She slips her phone back into her pocket without arguing. At dinner, the tables from Thanksgiving remain joined, but we occupy only part of their length. I have not made place cards. People choose their own seats and leave coats over 2 empty chairs. Grandma sits beside Fallon's youngest child. Judd takes the chair nearest the kitchen because he expects to get up for seconds. Fallon sits across from me. There is no head of the table because no one has claimed it. For a moment, I think about the 2 letters in the drawer upstairs. I will read them again after Christmas. I may answer my parents to meet me somewhere neutral. Whatever happens will take longer than 1 dinner, and require more than a toast. Fallon passes me the potatoes. Someone at the other end starts telling the story about great-grandpa and the electric carving knife, already changing 3 details Grandma insists are essential. I look around the table. It is smaller than the one I imagined and less complete than the photograph I once wanted. Then I sit down before the food gets cold.